finished Booktubeathon! For a little while it was sort of touch and go there because, man, when you're deliberately trying to read 7 books in a week, it's actually really hard. Hi guys, it's Steffi from the Novelty Corner. Welcome back to my channel. I apologise for the lighting. There is literally no light outside, so I'm having to use the room lights and the window, and it's just a mess, but hopefully we can muddle through this. It is the end of Booktubeathon, and I am really pleased to say that I completed all of my challenges. I read 7 books in 7 days, and it wasn't easy. As I said in the intro, you know, I can read 7 books in 7 days, but usually I do that just because I can pick up whatever I want whenever I want to read it, and sticking to a TBR is really quite difficult, and trying to get through those books while working full-time, that's really tough. And I didn't even get to any of the video challenges or the Instagram challenges, so I take my hat off to those people who did do those, because that's incredible and I think you're all amazing, and I've been following along on YouTube and on Instagram. I did finish my books. I'm going to talk about them. I did try to vlog this and I really failed. I'm not really good at the vlogging stuff. I found that it was taking up too much time, and in the end I decided that I would rather read than film the vlog. So I'm going to do this traditional wrap-up style. Okay, so stats. The readathon took place from the 24th of July to the 30th of July, midnight to midnight, whatever your time zone. I read 7 books and a total of 2,259 pages. This brings my yearly reading total up to 158 books, so I'm really pleased with that. And now let's talk about the books. The first book that I read was Perry Angel's Suitcase by Glenda Millard. This was for the challenge Read a Book Entirely Outdoors. Obviously I picked this because it was super short. It is a middle grade book. I think it only took me about an hour, and I was sitting outside on my balcony while it was raining, because I've got a nice little covered area where my chair is, so I can just sit outside. It was actually really quite peaceful to do that, except I had to be rugged up like a snowman. Perry Angel's Suitcase is the 3rd book in the Kingdom of Silk series, and it follows the adventures of Griffin, Silk, and his best friend Layla. And in this story, the Griffin family is considering fostering a little boy named Perry. And Perry comes to stay with them, and obviously he's in a completely different place to the rest of the kids in the household. And it takes him a long time to open up to them and to trust that they want the very best for him. So this is a very moving story. Again, you know, I've coined the other 2 books the happy sad books. This is no different. And I love how Glenda Millard is tackling issues that children have to deal with, but are not always talked about appropriately by adults. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. It is a great little read and well worth picking up. The next book I read was George by Alex Gino, and this was for the challenge to read a book entirely in one day. Again, this is a middle grade book. It has quite big writing, big spaces on the pages, was really easy to get through, and so I completed that challenge quite easily. This is the story of George, who was born a boy, but she knows that she's a girl, and she hasn't really told anyone that. She's just sort of going through her daily schooling life and her life at home, knowing that she's a girl and exploring that part of herself without anyone there to support her. Everything sort of comes to a head though when her class is putting on a production of Charlotte's Web, and she really wants to try out for the part of Charlotte. However, only the girls can try out for Charlotte. She does try out for Charlotte. She's told that she can't have the part because she's a boy and it wouldn't be fair to the girls. The things that I really loved about this book, I absolutely adored George's friend Kelly, who is very, very supportive and wants to include George in absolutely everything, and the ending just, it made me smile so much. I also really like George's brother Scott, the way he handles George talking to him about the way she's feeling, and also, even though this character had a really small part, the school principal as well, I thought was really well done. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee, and this was for the challenge to read a hyped book. Warning bells should have gone off in my head for picking this for a hyped book, because me and hyped books can be a little bit touch and go. And while I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars because it is really good, I was disappointed by it because I don't know, I felt like the pacing in this was really off. It is the story of Henry Montague, who known by his friends as Monty, who is a bit of a rake. He likes to party, he happily sleeps around, he enjoys to drink, and he's sort of brought shame onto his family because he's been raised to be a gentleman, and yet he is always caught in very compromising situations. In an effort to curtail some of his behaviour, his family have agreed to send him on a grand tour of Europe as a one-year hurrah before he comes back to England and settles down and begins to learn how to take over the estate from his father, which is something he's not particularly fussed about doing. He's going on this tour with his best friend Percy, who he has had a long-time crush on, as well as his sister Felicity. I really had a trouble connecting with the character of Monty. I'll be honest, I didn't really like him. Loved Percy, loved Felicity. Felicity was hilarious and I absolutely adored her, and I loved the way that she stood up for herself. I did find the pacing was a little bit off. I know a lot of people have said they really enjoyed the audiobook, so maybe it's a different experience listening to it read. However, I just found it to be a little bit slow, and for something that's quite big, I mean this one was over 500 pages, it was just a little slow for my taste. This book obviously has LGBTQIA+ themes. It also deals with a character who has epilepsy, and I really liked how those were well done. I liked Mackenzie Lee's notes at the end, but yeah, overall 4 out of 5 stars for me. Then I read Truth Witch by Susan Dennard, which was for Read a Book That You Bought Because of the Cover, because I bought it for this cover because I've seen the other cover and I didn't particularly like it. I was really worried for the first half of this book because I was really struggling to get into it. I'm going to say right from the get-go that I'm going to pronounce all these characters' names wrong because this is one of those fantasy books with names that are unpronounceable to me, but I'll give it my best go. So this is the story of Safia and Isolde, who are longtime friends. Both these girls have different types of magic in this world where people have all kinds of different magic tied to different elements. After they attack the convoy of a guild master, they attract the attention of his bodyguard, who is a blood witch, and the blood witch decides to pursue them as they flee from their home. There's a whole lot of other things that are going on in the background. There's some political intrigue. There's a whole lot of detailed magic systems that you have to wrap your head around, and the world, honestly, I don't think I've fully wrapped my head around it, so I'm not even going to try and explain further than that. In the end, I did give it 3.5 out of 5 stars, even though I don't 100% understand what I read, because once I say this all the time, once I hit the action portion of the story, I was fine. I can follow action threads and that sort of stuff really easily, but it's the world building that has to get me. 3.5 out of 5 stars. I may read the second book, but I don't know, because I sort of fell in love with Merrick. The next book I read was The Ones That Disappeared by Zaina Fralin, which I read for the challenge, read a book about characters who are different to you. I can't remember if this was the one that was in my TBR or if I had another book, but this was the one that I ended up reading. Zaina Fralin is the author of The Bone Sparrow, which I read earlier in the year and absolutely adored, and that story followed a little boy who was living in a detention centre, and The Ones That Disappeared continues that trend of children in really dire circumstances, but this is about children who have been trafficked. It follows the stories of Ezra, Mirren and Isa. I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce the name, so just bear with me. We begin the story with them working in the basement of a house tending to plants. They've been told that they belong to the Snakeskin Gang and that they need to do what the leader has asked them to do. Ezra, however, knows that she doesn't belong to anyone and is working really hard so that one day she can be free. Together, Ezra and Mirren have this really beautiful friendship that is built on trust and respect and remembering their old home. Isa is the youngest of the 3 children and he's sort of taken under their wing. But one day something goes horribly wrong while they're tending to the plants and they find an opportunity to escape and leave that house and to finally be free for themselves. This was a really interesting read. Zaina Fralin has such an interesting writing style. It's beautiful and it's heartbreaking, and I mean ultimately both of her stories always end with this idea of hope for the future, and I think that's really, really fantastic. This story was a little bit different to The Bone Sparrow in that I think there was more of a magical realism thread running through it, because part of it, there's a figure that reminds me very much of like a golem myth. Now I'm not an expert on golem myths by any stretch, but it reminded me of that. For a while it did throw me out of the story. It took a lot longer to get into this story than it did The Bone Sparrow. But once I started thinking of it in a magical realism sense, which I wasn't originally expecting, it was a lot easier to just go with the flow of the story. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was a really good read. Then I read Juniper Lemon's Happiness Index by Julie Israel. This was for the challenge of read 7 books, so this didn't fit any of the other categories. So this was my 7th book. This was also the Booktubeathon pick for the readathon, and it is the story of Juniper Lemon, who has recently lost her older sister. Juniper has obviously always had an issue with looking at the positive things that are going on around her, and her older sister sparked this issue of the happiness index, where she records positive things that happen during the day. And then once her sister dies, Juniper continues that series because it's now a habit that she's got, and she uses it as a way of reflecting on each and every day, positives and negatives, and how she copes. One day she discovers a letter in one of Camille's old bags, and it is addressed to you, and Juniper doesn't know who the you is. Juniper begins to investigate this mysterious you and try and track down who it is, and along the way one of her happiness index cards disappears. This was just a nice contemporary book. It does have some pacing issues. There's a bit in the towards the middle where you just sort of like, okay, can we move this along because we sort of know what's going to happen. It was still a nice idea, and I like the idea of a happiness index because I do believe that for some people really do need that physical record of all the good things that happen in a day. Overall, I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. It's a solid read if you like your contemporary books. The last book that I read was for the challenge reader book with a person on the cover, and for that I read Every Breath by Ellie Marnie because there were 2 people on the cover. This is an Australian Love Oz YA thriller novel, and it was fantastic. It is a Sherlock-esque retelling set in Melbourne with teenagers, and it was absolutely wonderful. I also read this in one sitting, and it is the story of Rachel Watts, who used to live in the country but has moved to Melbourne, and she's not particularly happy about being in the city because she's a country girl. However, once she moves to Melbourne, she meets her neighbour James Mycroft, who is a troubled teenager. He has had a rough past, but he's also a genius, and he has a real big passion for forensics. They've struck up an unlikely friendship, and the story begins with them dealing with the aftermath of Mycroft getting into a fight at school. One night, while out visiting one of Mycroft's homeless contacts, they discover that his friend Homeless Dave has been killed, and against Rachel's better judgment, she agrees to help Mycroft investigate the death. This was honestly just such fun. I love thrillers, and this was a really, really great one. And there's 2 more books in the series that I really want to get to, and the new book, which I think is related to this series, is coming out next month as well. Rachel is a great character. She's really trying to deal with her family's move from the country, and so she's in a really odd spot, but she's a really strong female character. Then you have Mycroft, who is very Sherlock-esque, and it's great, but he has a really troubled past, and people don't know how to deal with him because he does things now just because he can, and he doesn't see the harm in that. And they have this wonderful friendship. There's a really well done sense of underlying sexual tension between the 2 of them, and it was just fantastic. I absolutely adored it, and I'm really looking forward to picking up the next 2 books very soon. I gave Every Breath 5 out of 5 stars. That's everything I read for Booktubeathon. I'm pretty impressed with myself. However, I think I'm going to have to take a day or 2 off reading just to process and recover. In the comments, let me know if you participated in Booktubeathon. How did you do? How many books did you get to? What was the best one that you read? Tell me anything about it. I would love to hear, because while I have been trying to keep up with everyone, it's been a little bit hard to keep up with everyone. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're having a wonderful day, and I will catch you guys in my next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye guys.